They didn't just trespass on my land. They carved a trench straight through the heart of my ranch, ripping open the cottonwood grove where I scattered my grandfather's ashes. The smell of diesel mixed with broken sagebrush as bulldozers chewed through earth that carried 70 years of family history. The HOA president never looked up from her phone. She smirked, told me to show her a death certificate, as if love and memory needed paperwork. She thought I would roll over, powerless. What she didn't know is that in the West, whoever controls the water writes the rules, and I would soon own it all. My name is Marlowe Colt. Call me Marley. 3 years ago, I inherited 240 acres of high desert rangeland in Fremont County, Wyoming. My grandfather, Thaddeus, homesteaded this land in 1948. He came back from the war with nothing but a duffel bag, a land grant, and a determination that every sunrise would belong to him. He built everything by hand: the house with its creaky wooden porch, the barn with beams he cut from cottonwood, the windmill that still moans in the Wyoming wind. He was 1/4 Shoshone, and he knew this land the way some people know music. He could tell where underground springs would surface, which pastures would flood in April, and how the soil remembered the trails where buffalo once thundered. When I was 9, he taught me to read survey maps on the kitchen table, his rough hands tracing lines with the smell of burnt coffee drifting from the stove. "Land doesn't lie, Marley," he'd say. "People do." That was the lesson I carried with me when he died in 2019. I scattered his ashes beneath the cottonwoods, the wind carrying his spirit through the meadowlark's morning song. No marble stone, no ceremony, just soil, sky, and love. For 15 years, I had worked as a water rights paralegal in Denver. Good career, bad marriage. By 2021, I was divorced, weary, and searching for something real. I sold my practice, cashed out my retirement, and came home. I threw myself into restoring the ranch, rotational grazing, native grass restoration, a small beef cooperative. Slowly, the land began to heal me, stitching scars I didn't even know I carried. And then Ridgemont Estates appeared, 3 miles east, rising from the desert like a mirage. A gated community of McMansions, artificial lakes, and a golf course thirstier than 40 ranches combined. They paid no mind to the drought or to the history of the land. And when they needed more water for their expansion, they chose the cheapest route for their pipeline. Not the fairest route, not the legal route, but straight through my land, right across the grove where my grandfather rests. It was a spring morning when I first saw the orange survey stakes. They were lined up every 50 feet, marching through the cottonwoods like tiny bonfires. No letter, no knock on my door, no warning, just bright flags claiming what wasn't theirs. At the county clerk's office, I discovered what had happened. Ridgemont Estates had filed for private condemnation, using a loophole that allowed an HOA to claim an easement if no economically viable alternative existed. That was a lie. They could have run the pipeline along the county road for an extra $200,000. But negotiation takes time. Steamrolling doesn't. I drove to their marble clubhouse, my boots squeaking on polished floors. The president of the HOA, Vivian Straude, sat on a leather chair, scrolling her phone. I told her they had desecrated a burial site. She didn't even blink. "Ashes aren't legally interred," she said, smiling. "Show me a death certificate." Her laughter echoed in that sterile lobby, sharp as broken glass. That was the day I declared war. 3 days later, on a Friday night, I walked the grove. Orange fencing enclosed the wildflowers. The survey line cut right through the soil where I'd whispered goodbye to my grandfather. Cottonwood leaves rustle in the wind like maps being shuffled, his voice reminding me, "Land doesn't lie." I let myself cry for 5 minutes. Then I wiped my face, pulled out my phone, and called Hector Ruiz, an old colleague from Denver who specialized in water law. "I need an emergency injunction filed by Monday morning," I said, because Vivian just made the biggest mistake of her life. That weekend was a blur of coffee, dust, and paperwork. Hector drafted a temporary restraining order, while I dug to my attic for anything that proved Thaddeus's heritage and the sanctity of the land. Enrollment papers from Pine Ridge, his 1948 land patent, discharge papers from Anzio, By Sunday night, Hector had filed. Monday morning, we walked into court with hope in our pockets. Judge Vernon Kemp was known for hating corporate overreach. For a moment, I thought we had a chance. But Ridgemont had brought 3 attorneys from Jackson Hole's most ruthless firm. They walked into that courtroom like predators in tailored suits. Their arguments came fast and sharp. No graves marked in any geological database. Tribal enrollment irrelevant in this jurisdiction. And the kill shot. Your Honor, excavation already began Friday evening before this hearing. Halting now would waste resources and leave dangerous trenches exposed. They had outmaneuvered me. While I was filing paperwork, they had already broken ground. Judge Kemp's voice was heavy. Technically legal, though morally questionable. Motion denied. I left the courthouse with a hollow chest. When I drove home, the backhoe was already chewing through the cottonwoods. The foreman met me at the truck, holding something in his hands. My grandfather's bronze plaque, bent and caked in mud. "First scoop," he said quietly. "I'm sorry." I sat in my truck, holding that broken plaque, shaking with rage. And then I noticed a survey map posted on my mailbox. In small print, it named the water source, Clearstone Reservoir. Allocation managed by Fremont Watershed District. That was the crack in their armor. Ridgemont didn't own their water. They were allocated it. And allocations come with rules, deadlines, and consequences. I spent nights combing through archives, the glow of my laptop casting shadows while coyotes howled outside. I found a bylaw from 1987 stating any private entity consuming more than 500 acre-feet annually must renegotiate every 10 years. Ridgemont consumed 620. Their last renewal? 2014. They were overdue. But that wasn't all. The Fremont Watershed Board had 7 members. 6 were ranchers and small-town officials. The 7th? Dalton Stroud, Vivian's brother. Every vote Ridgemont needed, he delivered. And nowhere in the record did he disclose their relationship. That was fraud. That was leverage. I wasn't alone. I found allies. Iris Pendleton, a retired hydrologist, agreed to model Ridgemont's water theft. Ty Booker, a reporter from Casper, promised an expose. Ranchers whispered support, careful not to draw retaliation. Meanwhile, Vivian escalated, threatening voicemails. Someone cut my fence, scattering my cattle onto the highway. Anonymous complaints to the Department of Agriculture accused me of overgrazing. Then came the fire. My hay barn went up in flames. Accelerant found at the base. No arrests. No proof. Just smoke and ash. Still, I kept digging. And then I found the key, Antler Creek, a tributary feeding 35% of Clearstone Reservoir. Senior rights dated back to 1904. And those rights were about to expire unless renewed. Blue Ridge Holdings, a shell company, owned the land but not the rights. When I called, they offered to sell me those senior rights for $80,000. I had $22,000 in savings. I sold cattle, launched a fundraiser, and ranchers I'd never met mailed checks with notes saying, "Make them pay." When I signed those papers, Antler Creek's senior rights became mine. And with them, the power to cut Ridgemont dry. The day I signed the deed, I drove straight to the Cottonwood Grove. The pipeline hummed beneath my boots, carrying water to keep Ridgemont's golf course green while ranches around me ran dry. I knelt in the dirt and whispered, "I got it, Grandpa. I got the water." Owning senior rights didn't just give me leverage, it gave me control. In drought years, priority claims rule everything. My 1904 claim would always come before Ridgemont's 2014 allocation. If I exercised those rights, their taps would run dry, their sprinklers silent, their golf course a wasteland of dust. But it wasn't just about vengeance. It was about justice. Water was meant for the people who lived on this land, not imported Kentucky bluegrass. Vivian tried to buy me off. She drove up my ranch road in a white Lexus, handed me an envelope stuffed with cash. $150,000, she said. Drop the complaint. Sign the NDA. Walk away. I wiped my hands on my jeans. "You think you can buy me?" Her smile turned sharp. I buried people for less than this. She left in a cloud of dust. That was her final mistake. August 25th, Fremont County Community Center. The Watershed Board meeting was packed with 200 people, ranchers in worn boots, Ridgemont homeowners in pressed polos, and reporters clutching notepads. The air smelled of coffee and sweat. Ridgemont's lawyers argued first. Cutting off this water threatens 2,000 families. This is administrative oversight, nothing more. Vivian followed, feigning tears. One bitter woman wants revenge. Children will suffer. Then Hector rose. We call our first witness. Iris projected her hydrology maps. Ridgemont consumed more water than every other private user combined. Downstream wells were failing. Fish populations were collapsing. The room murmured. Next came Gil Navarro, a rancher. Vivian offered to buy my land. I refused. The county raised my taxes by 32% the next month. 3 others here had the same happen. Coincidence. Finally, Ty the reporter presented Dalton's undisclosed relationship. He read every vote Dalton cast in Ridgemont's favor. He looked up. He never disclosed that the HOA president is his sister. The room erupted. Dalton tried to defend himself, but the chairman silenced him. Disclosure is not optional. It's the law. Dalton walked out, shame written across his back. The board reconvened after recess. Their verdict was clear. Dalton removed Ridgemont's allocation, suspended pending million-dollar conservation upgrades, and my senior rights approved. Vivian shot me a look of pure hatred as cameras flashed. She stormed out, middle finger raised. Her empire had crumbled in public. The fallout was immediate. Ridgemont's bond defaulted. Their president resigned, and homeowners turned on each other in fury. Some threatened lawsuits. Others demanded accountability. But something unexpected happened, too. Not everyone in Ridgemont had known. Some came to my ranch to help rebuild the barn that arson had taken. They swung hammers beside ranchers, sweat and dust erasing old lines. By spring, Ridgemont had installed gray water recycling, cut their golf course in half, and planted native grasses. Water levels stabilized. Iris was hired as a consultant. I partnered with the Eastern Shoshone tribe to co-manage Antler Creek. Together, we launched a conservation program and a scholarship fund in my grandfather's name. Now, every September, we hold a Water Heritage Festival on my ranch. Hundreds gather to celebrate, to remember, to fight for what matters. Vivian thought she could bury the past, but the land remembers, and so do the people who love it.